Now we're going to begin the reproductive system. The reproductive system is a unique system. It's the only system that's not essential to the life of the individual. However, it is important for the survival of the species. It does affect other systems. Male and female reproductive organs are different. They produce and store specialized reproductive cells that combine to form new individuals. Reproductive organs also secrete hormones that play major roles in the maintenance of a normal sexual function. There are certain reproductive structures. Gonads are the organs that produce gametes. Those are sex cells and hormones. Ducts receive and transport the gametes. Accessory glands secrete fluids into ducts, and perineal structures, collectively known as the external genitalia. The reproductive tract includes all the chambers and passageways that connect the ducts to the exterior of the body. The male and female reproductive systems are functionally different. The female produces one gamete per month and retains and nurtures the zygote. The males produce large quantities of gametes. They can produce about 500 million sperm a day. The male reproductive system includes the testes or male gonads. They secrete the sex hormones called androgens. They produce male gametes, spermatozoa or sperm. In contrast, the female reproductive system has the ovaries or the female gonads. They release one immature gamete or oocyte per month. They produce hormones. They have the uterine tubes and they carry the oocytes to the uterus. If the sperm reaches the oocyte, fertilization is initiated and the oocyte matures into an ovum. They also have the uterus that encloses and supports the developing embryo. And then they have the vagina, and that connects the uterus to the exterior. The male reproductive functions include the external genitalia, which include the scrotum. That encloses the testes. And then the penis, that's the erectile organ that contains the distal portion of the urethra. Here the male anatomy is pictured. Here the female anatomy is pictured. There are two muscles in the male reproductive function. The dartos muscle is a layer of smooth muscle in the dermis of the scrotum that causes the characteristic wrinkling of the scrotal surface. And then the cremaster muscle. It's a layer of skeletal muscle deep to the dermis. It tenses the scrotum and pulls the testes closer to the body for temperature regulation. Spermatogenesis is the process of sperm production. It begins at the outermost layer of the seminiferous tubules and proceeds towards the lumen. Here we see the anatomy of a sperm. We see the head, the neck, the mitochondrial spiral, the fibrous sheath of the flagellum, and that is the tail. The urethra in the male reproductive system is used by the urinary reproductive system. It extends about 18 to 20 centimeters or 7 to 8 inches. It goes from the urinary bladder to the tip of the penis. It's divided into three regions: the prostatic, the membranous, and the spongy. The ejaculate is a volume of fluid produced by ejaculation. It contains the spermatozoa, the seminal fluid, and the enzymes. The enzymes include protease, seminal plasmin, prostatic enzyme, and fibrinolysin. The male external genitalia is the penis. It's a tubular organ through which the distal portion of the urethra passes. It conducts urine to the exterior and also introduces semen into the female's vagina. The penis has three main parts. The root, that's the fixed portion that attaches to the body wall. The shaft or body, which is the tubular movable portion of the penis. It consists of three cylindrical columns of erectile tissue. And the glands, that's the head of the penis, and it's the expanded distal end of the penis that surrounds the urethral orifice. Here the penis is pictured, and you're able to see the shaft and the glands. Testosterone is an important male hormone. It establishes the secondary sex characteristics of the male. That includes distribution of facial hair, increased muscle mass and body size, and characteristic fat deposits or adipose tissue deposits. It also maintains the accessory glands, and the organs of the male reproductive tract. Now let's begin the female reproductive system. It produces the sex hormones and functional gametes. It protects and supports the developing embryo, and it nourishes the newborn infant. The organs of the female reproductive system include the ovaries, uterine tubes, uterus, vagina, and external genitalia. Here the female anatomy is pictured. We see the ovary and the uterine tube and the ovarian follicle. We're able to see the uterus, the vagina, and the urinary bladder. Here's a more posterior view. Again, we're able to see the uterus, the vagina. We're also able to see the rectum and the anus. Here's an anterior view, and we're able to see, again, the ovary, the uterine tube, the uterus, and the vagina. The ovaries are small almond-shaped organs near the lateral walls of the pelvic cavity. There's three main functions: the production of immature female gametes, oocytes, or eggs, the secretion of female sex hormones, estrogens and progestins, the secretion of inhibin involved in the feedback control of pituitary FSH. The uterine tubes are also called the fallopian tubes or oviducts. They're hollow muscular tubes about 13 centimeters or 5.2 inches long, and they transport the oocyte, the egg, from the ovary to the uterus. Again, we see the ovaries, the uterine tubes, and the uterus pictured here. This is a posterior view. The uterus provides for the developing embryo 1 to 8 weeks, and the fetus week 9 through delivery. This is what it provides: mechanical protection, nutritional support, and waste removal. The cervix is the inferior portion of the uterus. It extends from the isthmus to the vagina. The distal end projects about 1.25 centimeters or a half inch into the vagina. The external OS is also called the external orifice of the uterus, is surrounded by the distal end of the cervix. It leads into the cervical canal. The cervical canal is a constricted passageway opening to the uterine cavity of the body at the internal OS or internal orifice. The uterine cycle is known as the menstrual cycle. It's a repeating series of changes in the endometrium. It lasts from 21 to 35 days. The average is about 28 days, and it responds to hormones of the ovarian cycle. Menses and proliferative phase. That occurs during the ovarian follicular phase, and the secretory phase occurs during the ovarian and luteal phase. Menstruation is the last process of the endometrial sloughing. It lasts 1 to 7 days, and it sheds about 35 to 50 milliliters, or 1.2 to 1.7 ounces of blood. Menarche is the first uterine cycle, and it begins at puberty, age 11 to 12. Menopause is the termination of the uterine cycles, and that happens between ages 45 and 55. The vagina is an elastic muscular tube, and it extends between the cervix and the vestibule. It's 7.5 to 9 centimeters, or 3 to 3.6 inches long. It's highly dispensable. There are three functions of the vagina. It's a passageway for the elimination of the menstrual fluids. It receives the spermatozoa during sexual intercourse, and it forms the inferior portion of the birth canal. The hymen is an elastic epithelial fold that partially blocks the entrance to the vagina. It's usually ruptured by sexual intercourse or by tampon usage. The paraurethral glands are also called the Skene's glands, and they discharge into the urethra near the external opening. The clitoris is a small protuberance in the vestibule. It has the same embryonic structures as a penis. The extensions of the labia minora form a precipice or a hood. The mons pubis and the labia majora form the outer limits of the vulva. They protect and cover the inner structures and contain adipose tissue. They also contain sebaceous glands and apocrine glands and secrete into the inner surface of the labia majora. Here the external female anatomy is pictured. Next are the mammary glands. They secrete milk to nourish the infant, and it's called lactation. They're specialized organs of the integumentary system. They're controlled by the hormones of the reproductive system and the placenta. They lie in pectoral fat pads deep to the skin of the chest, a nipple on each breast. They contain ducts from the mammary glands to the surface. The areola is the reddish-brown skin around each nipple. Here the mammary glands are pictured. Estrogen is an important female hormone. There are 5 basic functions. Number 1, it stimulates bone and muscle growth. Number 2, it maintains the female secondary sex characteristics, things like body hair distribution and adipose tissue deposits. 3, it affects the central nervous system activity, especially at the hypothalamus where the estrogens increase sexual drive. And 4, it maintains functional accessory reproductive glands and organs. And lastly, 5, it initiates repair and growth of the endometrium. Emission. This occurs under sympathetic stimulation, and it's peristaltic contractions of the ampulla. The seminal glands contract, the peristaltic contractions in the prostate gland, and then sympathetic contraction of the urinary bladder and the internal urethral sphincter. And this prevents passage of semen into the bladder. Ejaculation occurs as a powerful rhythmic contractions. The ischiocarnivorous and the bulbospongius muscles that stiffen the penis push the semen toward the external urethral opening. This causes a pleasurable sensation, orgasm. It's followed by subsidence of the erectile tissue. Impotence is also called male sexual dysfunction, is the inability to achieve or maintain an erection. It's caused by physical or psychological factors. Female orgasm. It's accompanied by peristaltic contractions of the uterine and vaginal walls. Also rhythmic contractions of the bulbospongiosus and ischio-cavernous muscles. Now let's touch upon sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs. They're transferred by sexual intercourse. They include bacterial, viral, and fungal infections. They include PID, or pelvic inflammatory disease, AIDS, gonorrhea, syphilis, herpes, genital warts, and chancroid. Finally, let's touch upon the aging effects and the reproductive system. In the female reproductive system, there are changes associated with menopause. In the male reproductive system, there are changes associated with male climacteric or andropause, and they occur gradually over a longer period of time. During menopause, this is a time that ovulation and menstruation cease. Typically, it occurs around age 45 to 55. Circulating concentrations of estrogen and progesterone decline, and the production of growth hormone releasing factor, FSH, and LH rise sharply. And this completes the reproductive system.